Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, on Sunday, a church in Minneapolis, Minnesota was attacked by vulgar and aggressive anti-Christians. That's my word for it. This is an evil expression of the anti-God, anti-Christian, and anti-law terrorists who have now graduated from protesting and assaulting ICE agents to screaming and swearing at children and families during church services. We'll see a video of that in a few moments, but just for the record, if you are the person interrupting and swearing at children in a Baptist church service to prove a political point, you are not the good guy, no matter who in the government, the neighborhood, or the media is with you. All this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Hey everybody, welcome back to Church Public. Really appreciate you stopping by. If you haven't already, hit all the likes and subscribe buttons. Do all those things. If you have not checked out the Substack at substack.com/@churchpublic, I really appreciate that too. That is helpful to me as I'm just trying to grow this small channel by sharing current events from a Christian perspective to help you live out your faith. And I think today's example is a really good example of us needing to live out our faith. What we see in this first example, which I'll show in just a moment, is the society, the world, literally breaking into a church during a service, and you're going to be tested and you're going to have the opportunity to see if your faith is real because they're going to be shouting all manner of things at you. And let's just back up before we watch this video and just remember what's going on. Tension has been building in Minneapolis for several weeks now. Also, remember, this is mostly because the Somali community there has allegedly participated in massive fraud uncovered by a social media journalist a few weeks ago now. From there, ICE has been working hard to enforce the laws of the United States of America, like getting rid of the people who came into America illegally. Remember, ICE is not the Gestapo, even though people say that it is. It is a federally empowered law enforcement agency who is prosecuting those that have entered America illegally. That's an important distinction, and to make sure that we understand what we're talking about and all saying the same things, we need to keep saying the same things and making sure we're speaking the same language. And keep in mind that many of those being arrested are gang members and sexual predators, so ew, gross, and we're glad that those are getting pulled off the streets. By now, you've also seen, likely, the tragic interaction between a woman and an ICE agent where she refused direct orders, hit the officer with her car, and was sadly killed through this altercation. And this, of course, then led to rioting and destruction all over Minneapolis and many other cities across America. In the shadow of all that, and apparently in response to it, an evangelical church was interrupted in worship by protesters who burst through the doors very loudly, scaring children, shouting, blowing whistles, interrupting and bringing to an end the worship service. There were many vulgarities played. I think I have scrubbed this tape and removed those, but again, fair warning, like, this was just gross. And the accusation being made here is that the protesters, that one of the pastors of the church is connected to ICE. This is just one brief video of the incident.
So you can see the protesters here have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. So in the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and Nakima stood up and said her piece, and then the protesters surrounded her. But this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so here we go.
You could talk to the lead pastor.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if you could hear anything over the yelling, but Don Lemon, the quote-unquote journalist, was narrating, and apparently, and you can watch other videos. I didn't pull this one, but he had, I don't know if he planned this whole thing, but he planned to attend this whole thing knowing that they were going to show up and pester people through this process. So this is just gross. And it's terrible, and I honestly was kind of shocked by this whole thing. In seeing it, like I didn't expect this kind of situation to happen. I expected that people would respect church, they would respect Sunday morning worship. And let's look at the facts of the case. Indeed, one of the pastors of the church is the acting director of the ICE office field in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm not going to mention his name. I'm sure you can find it online, but for security reasons, like I'm not going to say that. We need to again say this is the ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement Service of the United States. It's not the Gestapo. It's not the Nazis, even though the media, the leftists, but I repeat myself, politicians, many other celebrities are saying that these people, that ICE agents are not wanted. The mayor of Minneapolis said something like this. The governor of Minnesota said something like this. Like, it's wild that this official branch of the United States is getting so much heat. It is a law enforcement agency, just like any other law enforcement agency, and they are federal law enforcement agents, period. That's just how it is. You can disagree with immigration policies. You can disagree with immigration laws, but you can't go against them as a believing Christian. You can go and try and change the laws, do whatever you want. But these protesters, agitators, I would say even maybe say terrorists, and that this is what we're seeing. They aided and abetted, or they influenced. They moved into this worship service. You saw the video here. It's jarring. There are other videos where these poor kids just look terrified. And this former CNN anchor, Don Lemon, was videoing and narrating this whole thing, offering his own commentary. They interrupted the worship service. They ended the worship service, and you can see all of this. I think you can even understand how people in that evangelical congregation were scared. And you had children and teenagers traumatized by the entire event. Here is Don Lemon trying to interview the pastor after disrupting the whole service. And by the way, the audacity to break into a worship service with all of these yelling and shouting and screaming and swearing people, and then to go to the pastor and get in his space and say, hey, tell me about what's going on. Listen to this.
This is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. So,
But there were folks who will.
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities.
I'm going to go ahead and pause it here and say, no, the First Amendment and freedom to protest does not extend into a private worship service. It does not. You are wrong, sir. You have read the Constitution wrong, sir. And I think it's important to say that outright. Like, the ability, the freedom to protest is against grievances and redresses from the government, not against a private worship service. That's just something else. I could call it a lot of different names. I'm trying to hold all of my name calling at this point, but that's gross, and what you're doing is gross, sir. Let's watch the rest of this here.
The hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Okay, I try to play this without pausing them, but he said, "Please don't push me." The interviewer, who is like, if you're just listening, and you should watch this because I think it's important to see these things, to understand these things. Mr. Dr. Don Lemon is so far up in this guy's face. Like, the guy just kind of went, hey, he didn't even say anything. But by the way, this pastor is so polite. Huge jewels in his crown. Props to this pastor who just kept saying, I'm proclaiming Jesus Christ, and that's my job, and I'm shepherding my flock. And Mr. Don Lemon is very close. If you're just listening, he's very close. Okay, let's a little bit more here.
Yeah, that's why we're here. Okay, that's why we're here. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to
Yeah, that's enough. So he very politely asked them to leave. Let's be clear, too. There are two things going on here. One, Don Lemon is trying to weaponize love your neighbor and turn the other cheek or something like that, and asking, like, would Jesus talk to these people? That is not the time. That is not what's going on here. What's going on here is an invasion of people into the church who clearly do not love Jesus. And are acting aggressively and scaring families and children. So that's not what's going on here. If they were protesting outside, perhaps there would be opportunity for members of the congregation or pastors to go out and try to share witness. That's one thing. Interrupting the service to the point that people are scared, and who knows what these invaders are going to do. No one is certain, and we have seen video over the past couple of weeks of things in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where this church is, where things have gotten violent and terrible. So they have every right to be scared and to say, no, this is not a time for witnessing and turning the other cheek. This is a time for you need to leave and you need to get out of this place. And if you'd like to come back for a worship service and encounter the one and only true living God and encounter Jesus Christ, great. That's not what you're doing here. You're trying to bring chaos and anarchy and disruption, and there's no space for that here. And as Christians, we don't have to turn the other cheek to that. We can very clearly say, no, our job here is to protect the families and to take care of people. It's wild. This whole situation is wild, and unfortunately, but not surprisingly, many news outlets are on the side of the protesters. The major newspaper in the Twin Cities area, the Star Tribune, said, quote, protesters disrupted a St. Paul church service on Sunday after activists determined one of the pastors works as the acting director of ICE's field office in St. Paul. So protesters disrupted a church service out of activists. No, that's not what's going on here. Like, they disrupted, they spread chaos and fear. That's what's going on here. And to say, like, that's okay because someone might work for ICE, which is a lawful agency of the United States of America, is just wild and unbelievable. The reaction of actual law enforcement is still unfolding. Harmeet Dillon, Assistant Attorney General of the United States, announced that responding to the videos, they were pretty much spreading through social media. She said they would launch an investigation. The Civil Rights Division is investigating the potential violations of the FACE Act. I just saw before I got on, I don't know if I can find it here, but that she was actually using, let's see. She was actually going to use something else, which I thought was hilarious. Let me see here. She says, Harmeet Dillon says, quote, it's evil to disrupt a place of worship, which of course. So here's what they're going to do. They are going to use the FACE Act. This is the latest that I see here. And she is going to use the KKK Act. Yeah, that's right. So this is just unbelievable, but appropriate, because you can't interrupt the worship of the people of God. That's not a First Amendment right. And someone needs to do something about that. So this is good. They're investigating criminal violations of federal law. This is all good. But the fact that this even could happen at all should be a huge wake-up call to all believers in America. You think you're safe. You think those old tropes are true, that there's a no-go zone in the sacred halls of a church. Clearly, that is not the case anymore. There is no sacred space to this crowd, well, except abortion. Abortion's the only sacred thing, but that's another story. No, this crowd doesn't care about your God or your worship or your Sunday or your family or your children. They will violently invade all of that to prove a point, and ultimately they are causing chaos, and their goal is to cause chaos. I know you hear me say all the time that it is Christ or chaos, but this is what I'm talking about. Every time you think you're safe in your suburban bubble, you think no one will barge into your worship service with foul words and screams at your children, but this shows that they will. We've too long been comfortable believing that some lines would not be crossed even by the gross other side. They have shown there are no more lines. They don't care if they feel you are against them. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter what's true. They will rise up against you, and shocker, they will not follow the rules when they do this. It is a miracle, and I do mean that no one in this congregation was armed and stood up to protect the church. I think the men of the church should have pushed out these people because they were up to no good and there was no reason for them to be participating in this. But if this thing continues to happen, someone like this is going to go into the wrong church where they do not deal with this in the same wonderful and patient and nice way. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just telling you the reality of the situation. Like, if churches, congregations realize that no one is going to protect them, from things like this, they're going to protect themselves. Again, I'm not saying that's necessarily the right way from a violent standpoint, but this can't go on. You can hold whatever opinion you want on immigration, legal. If you don't hold strong to the laws currently on the books with a view of Romans 13, you'll have a society that descends into chaos, and it will be difficult to pull it back out. I hope we understand that. I love history, and I love history because it shows us what happens when bad men lead, and this is the reality of it. Bad men are leading things like this now into churches, into our quote-unquote sacred spaces, and they don't care. And they're going to do wild things like this. And I hope that the federal government does persecute people for this, because they should. They should prosecute every person who was involved in this, including that old journalist, because this should not have been. And people should understand that. And if the federal government does not, it's going to get worse. And I'm not scared. I'm frustrated, and I'm saddened by this. But we need to wake up, and we need to see this is the time that we're in. The left does not care, and they clearly will use violence to accomplish their goals. Again, I am not in any way saying that we Christians, the right, should use violence. Not at all. But I think we also need to be firm and tell people like this to leave, because this is not right. On a related note, I think it's interesting, and that's maybe just me. We're constantly bombarded with how toxic the patriarchy is. That's what we're told everywhere, all the time. But if this kind of thing continues, just wait and see how toxic of a society we will live in when it becomes not ruled by law, but ruled by the strongest. If you are aware of any history at all, you'll know this is definitely not a good thing. And speaking of the left, and speaking of the way that they're talking about the right, they're talking about what happens next. I was going to play this clip. I'm not going to play this clip because it has a bunch of words in it that I didn't want to play. But this person who honestly I'm not that familiar with and I've never listened to, and tried to listen to this, and it was difficult to listen to. But this is Democrat activist Jennifer Welch, who was on a podcast with Jim Acosta. And their statements are that mass prosecutions of Trump, Republicans, she says Elon a bunch of times, would be necessary for national reconciliation when Democrats regain power. So hear that again. I know we've already seen this kind of lawfare used against Trump and others before Trump was elected this time. But what they're talking about here is that when they regain power, they're going to have to do all kinds of mass prosecutions for these people. She says something like, and I'm paraphrasing, and you can go listen if you want, but she says something like, a lot of crimes are being committed every day, and so we need to prosecute them to the nth degree once Democrats are in power again. And she argues at one point that expanding the Supreme Court of the United States is going to be required to jail Trump. So in other words, they're going to expand the government. They're going to expand the lawfare to the point where they're just going to jail everyone who they don't agree with or doesn't agree with them. And this, just to be super clear, expanding the Supreme Court ends America's time as a republic. Like it's gone. It takes us back before 1776, and it makes whoever can take and hold the country with violence the rulers. This is what I was saying. If you don't like the patriarchy, if you don't like good men ruling well, just wait until you have bad men ruling with force. Like, look at the Dark Ages. Look at everyone's seen Robin Hood and knows the Sheriff of Nottingham and the way that he rules, and the evil people in that story. And the reason that story is so popular is we know that that's bad. But if you remove the checks and balances of the Democratic Republican government, you will just have whoever's the strongest wins. And violence will be the way that law is kept. And that never ends well. Democrats are being very clear here. A peaceful transfer of power is no longer an option in the United States, and that is a big problem. She's saying, and Acosta's saying, like, essentially, if you hand over power, you'll be killed or spend your life in jail. So the people who work for you, your supporters, everyone around you, like, this is what they're saying they want to do. I know she's just a podcaster, sure, but I think she's saying the quiet things out loud. I think she's saying the things like that they really believe. The penalty for losing elections is no more elections, and ending elections entirely is no more elections. I mean, this is just where we are. And the previous story is a very clear picture of this dire future that we tend to be going into. In other like biblical and anti-Christian news, let's go through a couple more real quick here. How am I doing on time? I got a couple minutes. In Virginia, the first Muslim lieutenant governor, Hashmi, I believe is her last name, was sworn into office, and of course using the Quran. So here's a picture of that if you're just listening. I know Mamdani was also sworn in on the Quran. I reported on that. We just have to say no. Like the thing that for some reason we are forgetting or not understanding is that we don't have to say yes to this. Like Islam, the Muslim faith, that they're not true. They're not religions that are based on the true God. So they're anti-Christian. So they're pagan. And we can just say no, because I know this is very controversial, but we're a Christian nation, and we were founded as a Christian nation back in 1776, even way back before that in 1619, 1620, when the Pilgrims came. They did the Mayflower Compact. Go and read that. It goes even before that. People came to this country specifically to have religious freedom and create a Christian nation. So we can just keep doing that. We can just say, no, you can't be sworn in on the Quran. And if you are, then you're not fit for office. And I mean, go back and look at some of the laws before this, generations ago at this point, but not that long ago. You had to be a Christian to be in office in many places in America. You had to be a Christian. And in fact, to go even further, you had to be a Protestant. But obviously, those times are long gone. Now we're swearing into offices using the Quran, and it's not good. God is not pleased with that. Let's go to this story. Oh, this one. This has been a heavy session. So let's do a funny one. This actually happened on Capitol Hill. Senator Hawley presses a doctor on whether men can get pregnant. And its abortion pill hearing happened a few days ago before the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. They examined the risks of chemical abortion drugs like mifepristone. And this lady named Dr. Verma was asked the question. I don't know how much of this I'm going to play, but she was asked the question, "Can men get pregnant?" by Senator Hawley, and it goes on and on. I'll see how much I play for you, but it's incredible. Let's just listen for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since you bring it up, why don't we just start there? Dr. Verma, I wasn't sure I understood your answer to Senator Moody a moment ago. Do you think that men can get pregnant?
I hesitated there because I wasn't sure where the conversation was going or what the goal
As
was.
I mentioned before,
I mean, I do
sometimes,
take care of patients with different
this is
identities.
a
I take
one-man
care of many
operation,
women.
and in this particular sense, I don't know if you're hearing it, but it's not working for me. So give me just a moment to click a little clickety button here, and we're going to see if I can make this work. We're going to go back, and we're going to hit it right. Oops, here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since you bring it up, why don't we just start there? Dr. Verma, I wasn't sure I understood your answer to Senator Moody a moment ago. Do you think that men can get pregnant?
I hesitated there because I wasn't sure where the conversation was going or what the goal was. I mean, I do take care of patients with different identities. I take care of many women. I take care of people with different identities. And so that's where I paused. I think, I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Well, the goal is just the truth. So can men get pregnant?
Again, the reason I paused there is I'm not really sure what the goal of the question
The goal is just to establish a biological reality. You just said a moment ago that science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So let's just test that proposition. Can men get pregnant?
I take care of people with many identities, but
can men get pregnant?
Many women that can get pregnant. I do take care of people that don't identify as women. That
can men get pregnant?
Again, as I'm saying,
let me just remind you what you testified to a moment ago. Science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So can men get pregnant? You're a doctor, I think.
Science and evidence.
It goes on for literal minutes after this. I'm not gonna to force you to watch all this. I'll just land and say she never answers that question. The spoiler is surprising. She does not answer the question. But I'm going to fast forward this just a little bit, and he actually does pretty good. Let's hear a little bit of this ending.
That is not polarizing. That is truth. It is also, by the way, the United States Constitution, which offers unique protections to women in a variety of circumstances as women. And your refusal to recognize women as women and men as men is deeply corrosive to science, to public trust, and yes, to constitutional protections for women as women. And I think it's extraordinary that you would sit here and advance a political agenda that has been thoroughly discredited and rejected by the American people in this forum. And I'm glad we had this exchange because it is exceptionally clarifying. It is also in many ways quite depressing. I see that my time is nearly expired. I just want to thank the other witnesses for being here. Thank you for participating.
I mean, gosh, that just was good. And it's almost like I keep saying nature is healing, and what I mean by that is not that nature has a persona like some people say Mother Nature. What I mean by that is creation order. You can lie about it for a while, but you can't lie forever. You can't lie forever and say men can get pregnant because people have eyes. As Holly even mentioned, the science is very clear. They cannot. It is just so obvious. And what's terrifying is that this person got through a doctoral educational program and apparently practices and is not willing to say that men can't get pregnant. Can you imagine what else this person is saying or doing or practicing? I mean, how do you practice when you do not understand the basics of human biology? Like, this is the literal most basic thing imaginable, that women are the only parts of our human species that can get pregnant, but she can't admit that. And obviously she knows. I mean, obviously she knows, right? That's the thing. Like, it's a lie. Everyone knows it's a lie. She knows it's a lie, but you can't say it. And you can't say it because the left has been ideologically captured to this transgender shenanigans, and she's behind the times. He even said, like, I'm surprised we're still talking about it, because most people, I think most people now are getting that you can't lie forever. But we'll see. Okay, let's do another couple stories to have some time. Getting close, but I got a couple minutes here. This was an interesting story, and I titled it, Jesus is not a role model, and neither is Charlie Kirk. Children at the Marshall Elementary School in Eureka, Kansas, were given an assignment to write about their heroes, and the class was conducted by guidance counselor Casey Countryman. It was part of a project for sixth graders called, quote, Find Your Voice, end quote. One of the children said, my hero is Charlie Kirk. The teacher became uncomfortable and told the child Charlie Kirk is not a hero. Another person mentioned President Trump. At that point, the teacher became enraged, stated the children could not include political figures, so another student said their role model was Jesus Christ, to which she also said, you can't choose him. I mean, television station KWCH spoke with the Eureka parent of the sixth grader who said, when the student wrote Jesus, the teacher said religious figures were not allowed as part of the role model naming activity. But why? Like, I'm going to interject here and say, why? Wouldn't you want your kid to have a role model of Jesus? Like, so obviously this is anti-God, but it's more than that. It's anti-right. It's anti-conservative. The kids told their parents what happened. The parents complained to the school board. They're now represented by the American Center for Law and Justice. Quote, when parents complained about this viewpoint discrimination, the school's response made everything worse. Following a supposed apology to students, Principal Stacy Coulter addressed the sixth grade class and, according to multiple consistent student reports, instructed them that in the future they should bring concerns to school officials, not their parents. The principal stated the school should also be considered their family, end quote. Which, if that doesn't scare you to the nth degree, I don't know what does. I say consistently get your kids out of government schools. These are some of the reasons why. One, they think that your kids are their kids, which they're not, and you should make sure they're not. But two, they're saying if you see something bad or something you don't like or something doesn't go well, don't talk to your parents. Talk to the school officials. They love you more than your parents. This is disastrous, and it also answers a lot of questions. If you haven't believed me up to this point, and if you're listening, you're probably smarter than most, and you're already like on top of this. But if you haven't believed me at this point that the school system is out to get you, indoctrinate you into leftist ideology, communist, feminist propaganda, this is it. Like, you can't say, they say, oh, tell me who your role model is, and you're only allowed to choose leftist role models. Like, wild. And then when you do something and then say to your parents, hey, they didn't let me choose who I wanted to choose, the school officials say, oh, next time, don't tell your parents about this. Just talk to us, and we'll say, you're fine. Don't tell your parents about it because we're your family. They're not your family. No, sorry. Get your kids out of government schools. This is a disaster. The ACLJ alleged that the school district justified the ban on Jesus and Trump because public safety. They said, quote, allowing discussion of Charlie Kirk or Trump would create an unsafe environment or provoke disagreement, end quote. Yeah, this school system is broken. Okay, let's do a more positive one. I saw this report, and this is cool. 48% of young people in the United Kingdom say they believe in a higher power, up from 28% in 2018. So this is good. It's not great, but it's good. I mean, essentially, it's saying that they are spiritual but not religious necessarily. I hope and I pray that they would find the one true God and find Jesus, but it's good that this younger Gen Z is interested in religious things and spiritual things, and I hope they do find God through this process. A YouGov poll said, quote, with more churches and more people who are led by God who are showing that through the social media, I think you touch so many more people than you think, but I always feel like there might be a little bit of divine intervention sometimes, said one person, end quote. And this is good, and I am excited about that, but it is important to recognize that being spiritual but not religious is not necessarily good. And you do need to land in the Bible. You do need to land on the one true God. You do need to land on Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way, the only truth, the only life. All other ways do not get you to eternal life with God, to the Father. They just don't. And that's tragic, and it's the state of humanity, but we need to be able to preach that gospel clearly and fully, and not just rely on our feelings. Gosh, I don't really want to do this last one. What's our time? I'll do it because I bring you current events from a Christian perspective so you can live out your faith. And this is one where it's a good example of a bad example of following your faith. On January 8th, the Christian world was shocked. I know I was personally. If I look over, yeah, in fact, I can see a couple on my shelf right now. Philip Yancey has written many books who have helped me personally. I can say that for sure. And I was saddened. I was saddened to hear this news. Christianity Today posted a confession by author Philip Yancey. He said, quote, to my great shame, I confess that for 8 years, I willfully engaged in sinful affair with a married woman, end quote. And I think we need to look at this from a theological lens. This is tragic. It's terrible. It's gross. But what we need to understand is when Yancey says he has an 8-year affair, and he said, quote, my conduct defied everything that I believe about marriage, end quote. So that's what Yancey says. Everything I believed about marriage, wrote about grace, his conduct did not match what he wrote. And so he said everything he believes these things to be true, but he didn't live it out. I think, in fact, he did not believe the things that he said. I think he did not believe the claims he had about marriage. I think that's the real point here. We've focused as a church, as evangelicals, so much on faith and belief and grace that I think we forgot how we live is really important. And this is why, and I know people get frustrated with me. I've heard people say, stop being so practical and stop saying, like, live out your faith on all these things. No, no. This is the thing. We have got to live out our faith. We should read our Bible every day. You should read your Bible every day. I read my Bible today. You should read your Bible today. And we have to do something with it. We have to live out our faith. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. You will see things like we saw today in that church. You will see things like Yancey experienced with temptations and sin. And some of us will succeed and some of us will fail. Hopefully with the power of the Spirit, we succeed more than we fail. but how you live shows what you really believe. If you really do not fall into these sins, then you really believe what you say you believe. That, like, if you want more on this, and I'm not going to do it all today, read the book of James, the whole book of James, which gets a bad rap sometimes. People are like, he's saying it's a works-based faith. No, he's not. He's saying, if you really believe this, you're going to do it. And if you don't do it, you're showing me you don't believe it. We've entered this season where we focus too much on moral behavior and moral ideas and moral theology, but we focus too little on moral behavior. So we need to focus on the behavior. We're obsessed with grace and faith and against this legalism and fundamentalism. And I get it. And I don't want to be legalistic or fundamental, but doing the thing that I said I was going to do and doing the thing that God asks us to do is not legalism. That's living out your faith. James says, faith without works is dead. James 2. Christians need to understand that our behavior matters to God, and that saying we believe something while acting, especially for 8 years on something, means we don't have the faith we claim. The church needs to address this issue. We have to talk about this. We've rejected God and his law, and believe that his law doesn't apply. And I get it. And I've talked about this a bunch, and I won't go too far into it now, but we are not saved by our works. Ephesians 2. We are saved by grace through faith. That's it. And once we are saved, we are asked by God to live out his commands. That's the difference. We've spent so much time saying there's nothing you can do to earn your salvation, which is true. We've extended that beyond the point of salvation and said, now there's nothing you can do to live out your faith. But that's not true. There's nothing you can do to live out your salvation. True, yes, by grace through faith. And by obedience, you're supposed to live out your faith by following the things that God has told you to do. I don't feel like those are mutually exclusive. Like, you should understand that just makes sense. I love God. God loves me, and I'm saved by grace through faith. I love God. Now I'm going to do the things he has asked me to do. It's as easy as that. This gospel delivers us from the curse of the law, but the moral order, the standards of the law are things we need to do. And grace redeems us from this condemnation. And so we obey the gospel because we love God, and the law contains the gospel, and the gospel contains the law. Jesus himself says, if you love me, obey my commandments. So I don't want to, there's been a lot of people online that are just like trashing him. I don't want to do that at all. I want to have two different takeaways because I'm sad. I'm sad for Yancey. I'm sad for this admission. I'm sad for his failure. But my two takeaways are this. One, it is easy to say what you believe. I think it is very hard to live what you believe. It is easy to say what you believe. It's very hard to live what you believe, but we have to try. And number two, I must guard my own pride in that we all sin. We all fall short of the glory of God. And even the best, brightest, most gifted Christian among us is not immune from a fall. That's an important lesson, I think, for us all today. So that'll do it for me. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard. As always, keep the faith.